I've learned that there are people pleasers. Anybody a people pleaser in here? Anybody? Some of you are like, I don't know, do you want me to raise my hand? You're a people pleaser, right? Don't get mad at me, people pleaser. Here's how people pleasers work, okay? People pleasers, the benefit of a people pleaser is this. They really do care about people. Most of the people pleasers I know, very compassionate, very caring. So here's the good part. It's like, I really care about you. The negative, though, is because I really care about you, I also really care what you think about me. So you know what the response to a people pleaser is? If someone came up and said, hey, did you know Sarah was bashing you? She doesn't like you. Oh, no. Oh, no. Why don't they like me? You're laying in bed that night. Why wouldn't they like me? Oh, no. Why is someone mad at me? Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. That's your phrase. Oh, no. People pleaser. Man, I really care about people and really care what they think about me. Now there's, in my family, the Carpenters, is also what I call people fighters. Okay? And people fighters, a little different. They say, I really don't care about you, and I really don't care what you think about me. Anyone know people like that? Anybody like that? Yeah. I watch my brothers. They're like, I respect in so many ways people around me who I can tell, like, they really don't care. You ever met someone like that? They say something, and you're like, that was awkward. And they look at you and smile like, I don't care. Now, here's the negative, though, about a people fighter, though, is you have a healthy balance because you're not just worried about people, but you can also be a jerk, a colossal jerk at times, because you really don't care about people. Remember what I said, people pleaser, when someone says, hey, they're mad at you. Oh, no. You know what people fighters do? Hey, they're mad at you. Let's go. Right? One's, oh, no, they're mad at me. The other's like, let's go. Let's throw down right now. Like, I will come at you. And here's the cool thing about Jesus. Jesus did something completely different. Jesus actually said, like a people pleaser, I really care about you. Maybe no one else around here even cares about you, but I care about you more than you could ever imagine. If Jesus could say anything to all of you in this room, and I'd be like, I care more about you than you could fathom today. I promise you. Oh, you don't know what I've did. You don't know my story. You don't know my past. He's like, I don't care because I really care about you. But at the same time, he actually had this cool balance where he's like, but I don't care what you think about me. I know my role in life. I know what God's called me to do. And because of that, I don't worry about it. There's so many times they'd be like, you know, Jesus, when you said that, they got ticked. Jesus is like, I know. Hey, Jesus, you know, if we go back to that town, they're probably going to kill you. I know. Like, Jesus was not like, oh, what do they think about me? What? He didn't do that. He could completely care about you without caring about what you think about him. That's a healthy balance for all of us. Care about people, love them, be compassionate. But you can't live your life like, oh no, or let's go. Neither one of those really do fly. So what's the point of this? How does grace and criticism and people coming against us, how does that work out? Well, you have to understand grace to make criticism count. And I would argue today that all of us in here can make criticism count in our lives for good, even the bad type. Okay, why? Because your view of grace will determine how you view criticism. Your view of grace will determine how you view criticism. I told you guys in the beginning, at about 18, I started speaking at these different like little country churches all throughout kind of the area, backwoods, like Baptist churches. And my wife, who then at that point we were dating, a lot of times when I would go to these places, it would be my wife and my mom would go. And we'd usually double people's attendance in some of those places, like 3 of us, and it's double. But anyways, be in these rooms and be these really old people. So I was at a church. This is so dumb. And I screwed up a lot, trust me. I've never been really good at following rules, never really been good at the church rules, didn't really get them, didn't really agree with them, whatever. But I get invited to these places, and I remember I was in this one church, won't say the name, but it's in Lawrence County, country church, great people, I'm sure. But I get ready to get up there, and I look at this crowd, and they're all 90 plus. I think one lady maybe died while she was sitting there, I don't know. But they're just not into it. I mean, you just tell. They're looking at me, they're angry, and in my mind, I thought, what would liven this place up? A joke, right? So this is my conversation. I got to remind you guys, I got a D in public speaking. But I'm like, hey, what do I do? So here's my joke. I said, hey, before we get started, got a little joke for you guys. Here's my joke. I said, what's the difference between, that's a Baptist church, a Baptist preacher, and a catfish? And I said, one is a slimy, disgusting, bottom-dwelling sucker, and the other's a fish. funny, right? I promise you, one lady shakes her head and like leaves. And I look back, my wife's sitting in the back on this pew, and she's going, not today, right? But I can't tell you how many times I was speaking, and I would get up and walk out, and someone would be either frustrated with something I said, or I would get this a lot, bless your heart, you're trying. I heard that a lot. And we can laugh, but man, that stuff gets in your head, right? Like literally, hey, just keep trying. But one that really stunned me one time, I remember a guy told me, he was like, do you really think you're called to do this? And I said, I do. I'm 18 years old, I do. And he went, really? Right, that hurts. That's the criticism. So what I've learned as I get older is, how do we handle criticism? Now, I'm going to geek out for just a second, but I want you guys, I want to give you a table because I've been told wrong, I think wrong, my whole life. I want to show you just a graph real quick. Two things matter when you're taking criticism or critique. They're different, right? A critique is someone that has good intentions, like at work, maybe a boss, maybe a friend. Like, hey, could I offer some suggestions? That's a critique. But now criticism is sometimes just someone who doesn't like you. They're an enemy. So what I want to share with you just real quick is two things matter: accuracy and intentions. But I would argue, I've been told my whole life, like, if they're not for you, don't even listen to them. That's not very healthy. I've learned in my life a lot of people who want my demise and want to see me fail miserably actually have given me such great insights if I just slow down, don't get so offended, and listen to what they're saying. So the first question I try to ask myself anytime I take any criticism is this: is there a chance there could be some accuracy in this? Could they be telling the truth? Maybe even just partial truth, but are they telling some truth? And what happens is there's really three groups. So what happens when someone comes to you that has great intentions, they love you, say it's your spouse, and they're pretty accurate, like, hey, I noticed when you talk to the kids, you're kind of harsh. Don't get angry, right? What do? The top one. Want to slow down. Before you get all defensive, just slow down and be like, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. What else do we want to do? We want to ask for more details, but one of the key things for me is I like to go to other people and say, hey, my wife just said this. Do you think that's true about me? Like, be honest with me. And you know what? People will be like, yes. Don't be mad at me, but that's true of you. I love this. This is such a killer quote. He said, look at all the people who received miracles from Jesus during his ministry on earth. Not a single one of them deserved it. They did nothing to earn their miracles. On the other hand, we don't find any record of those who are trying to deserve blessings from God, like the Pharisees, receiving anything from Jesus. Think about that for a second. That's such a great picture of the New Testament. People who didn't deserve stuff, Jesus was like, no. He was like Oprah. You get a car. It was awesome. But people are like, no, Jesus, we're the good ones. And he's like, no, you're not. No, you're not. You think you deserve it, and that's when grace goes out the window. I was a few months back, getting ready to close here. A few months back, I walked out after the 11, walked out this door over here, and most people were out of here, so it's just a very few handful of people left. And a lady, very good friend, amazing woman, walks up to me, and she says, do you guys have members at C3? And I was like, well, we used to, and then we were thinking, is it really biblical? I mean, not wrong. I'm not against it. I'm just like, should we do it? Does that make sense? So I'm just giving her, she just wanted a quick answer. I didn't give it to her. I'm like, I don't know, da-da-da. And she said this, though. She said, the old church that I was at, I wanted to be a member, but I never could because I was divorced. And then she said this. She said, and she started telling me the story, and it's like, you hear the story, it's like, it wasn't even your fault. Like someone else wronged you? And I thought of this. So this person who's been hurt, who's been betrayed, and then they go to church like, hey, I want to be part of this faith community. I want to be with you guys. And like, no. I mean, you can show up, but you're not really part of us. And you know what really did hit me? You know, one of the most crushing things I've had in the last few months, because as she was telling me this story, literally, she had tears like building up in her eyes. And I thought, what would Jesus say in this very moment? You think Jesus would be like, I'm just not sure you deserve it? I don't think. No, that's not grace. Grace says, no, you don't deserve it. None of us in this room do. But I still want to give it to you. I want to pay off your car. That's how good grace is. So I was going to close with the story, but instead I want to give you just a quick picture. I'm going to give you one verse before we close, and I want you to hear how grace and anger and criticism and people attacking you, how grace is always the answer. Okay? Let's look at verse 44 one more time. He says, "But I say, love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you." Now keep that up there. Is that up there? Good. Okay? Now I'm just going to join you guys. Let's pretend. Let's all pretend together today. Let's pretend like Jesus is on this stage. Okay? Long flowing hair. He looks Swedish even though he's from the Middle East, right? Very white with blue eyes even though he's from an area that they don't look like that. Yeah, you're welcome. You deal with that later. Okay? But he's on stage, he's talking, he's doing his thing, and this is the sermon. It's a little tiny mount. He's up here, he's teaching, and we're all listening, okay? Sorry, I'm going to join you guys. So we're all listening here. And in the middle of Jesus' teaching, we're all like, man, this guy's legit. He's good, isn't he? So we're listening, and all of a sudden, he throws this banger of a quote out there. He says, "But I say, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you." Now, let's all be honest in the crowd. Probably much like that crowd was when Jesus said that. We're all like, that sounds good, but it ain't real. You see, Jesus, I like that you give these fake quotes that sound good and warm and fuzzy, but that's not how life works. You don't do that. I would argue people listening thought, that sounds good, it just doesn't work in real life. And listen to me, I'm not, some of you in here, if you're in an abusive relationship, if you're someone truly abusive, no, leave. Leave right now. I'm not telling you stay in that, but I'm talking about the lady at work who gets on your nerves. I'm talking about the people who push all your buttons. I just hate them. Jesus says, no, I'm going to tell you, pray for your enemies. You know, everyone in the crowd, when they heard that, I would argue, like all of us right now are like, that sounds good, it's just not real. I bet his closest followers are like, Jesus, I love it. It sounds awesome, but none of us can do that in real life. Fast forward. We'll close with this. Luke 23. Jesus, they arrest him illegally. They take him that night. They play a game back then that the Romans had called Hot Hands, where they literally would blindfold him and they would hit him, and you had to guess who hit you. And if you guessed wrong, which he didn't speak, so they just kept doing it. The Bible says he was unrecognized. You couldn't even recognize him. They had beaten him that bad. And then they put him on a cross, and as he's hanging on a cross, literally people are mocking. They're laughing. They're saying things like this: you claim to be able to save everyone from their sins. Save yourself. You're God's son. Call down angels. Do something. They're laughing while he's on the cross. Verse 33 says, when they came to a place called the Skull, they nailed him to the cross, and the criminals were also crucified. One is right, one is left. Jesus said, Father. And in that moment, if all of us here had the power of all of heaven and we could say, Father, what would we say? Destroy them. Father, make them pay. Father, they don't know what they're doing, so make them know what they're doing. But he didn't. He said, Father, forgive them, because they don't know. Father, forgive. Could you imagine being some of the ladies who are, because all his disciples fled, so they're nowhere to be found. But could you imagine being like some of those like followers who are a little bit more of a distance, but you're sitting there, and in that exact moment you have a flashback of him sitting on the mountain and saying, pray for your enemies. No one can do that. And here he is on a cross, and he's bleeding, and they've spit on him, and he says, Father, forgive them. He literally prays for his enemies. Now, here's the good news today before we close. You can't do this on your own. Neither can I. You can't. You won't. You'll refuse to. And Jesus is like, but this is the whole point of this whole series with the good life. The good life is, let me live my good life in you.